Today, we are going to kick off the Ring Series this fall in a way that I'm very delighted with. It's been too long since we've had this gentleman, tell his story about who he is and what he has done here, and it's a wonderful story. So I'm really pleased to welcome Nathan Collier. He's chairman, as most of you know, and founder of the Collier companies and Paradigm Properties, and he's also a graduate of our accounting program here and our law school, and so he's a Gator from start to finish, and has played a major role in the evolution of this university community from a small state college to where it is today. And in the course of that, he has built he's taken the risks and had the foresight to create what is now, I think, the largest student largest privately owned student apartment firm in the nation. And so we're really pleased to have him as one of our close friends and neighbors. Nathan, welcome.
Thank you very much. The University of Florida is an incredible institution, and during your time here, they will teach you many skills, but they're going to focus on the hard skills, as well they should. I'm going to talk to you while we're together about the soft skills that are necessary for success. I call this topic personal leadership, and also, I've got some questions that have Dr. Archer had gathered from the students, and I'm going to work some of them into my talk. But before I get into the meat of my talk, I'm going to try to give you some context. As you can see, we're the largest private owner of student housing. We're number 2 overall. You can't really see it, but it's behind ACC, which is American Campus Communities. It's the public REIT. Well, there's at least 3 public REITs in our sector, but it's the largest by far of the public REITs, run by Bill Bayless out of Austin, Texas, and very well run. But we are number 1 on the private side, and we're very proud of that achievement. We're also named by Florida Trend as the 163rd largest company, that's public and private, all companies in the state of Florida. And it's something we're proud of because the state of Florida is about to become, we're going to pass New York shortly, as the 3rd largest state in America. And so to be 163rd, it's pretty easy to be 163rd largest in South Dakota. But to be and this is by revenues, 163rd largest in the 3rd largest state in America is an accomplishment that we're proud of. And this is our org chart, okay? To give you a lot. I meet so many people, and that they'll have a title or something, and I don't have any real sense of how that fits into the overall, or how big the organization is, or what the organization does. So I show you this org chart simply to give you a sense of the size of our organization. Each one of these here represents an individual community. The top there is the, I don't think, let's see if I can get the pointer to work. The top here is what you might call our headquarters team, probably about 40 people. Overall, we're about 450 team members. These are what we call our regional community managers. They're the generals, so to speak, in what we do. The boxes, the community names, and then they list every service person, every office person there. We do our own, all our own accounting. We even do our own tax returns. But up here is our headquarters. In one sense of the word, I always love the nitty-gritty details. I said, don't tell me this big overall. With synergistic efforts, we were able to achieve economies of scales and create a new. That doesn't tell me anything. Tell me exactly the specifics of how you did things. We're actually 3 operating companies. And oh, by the way, for purposes of protecting ourselves from liability and personal injury attorneys, every one of those communities is a separate legal entity, okay? The legal, what we refer to, and we refer to all that as the Collier companies. And there is a legal entity that exists called the Collier companies, but it really doesn't own much. So the phrase, what we mean for Collier companies is really just nothing owns it all except back to me. So there's no legal entity that owns everything. There's a bunch of separate entities. But there are 3 operating companies. The first and foremost, and where all the people are, is the property management company. The people that do the nitty-gritty detail of leasing and service and taking care of, et cetera. And that's this big group you see there. And then there's a company called CAT, which is Collier Accounting and Technology, has about 15 people. It's our back office. It does our accounting. And we're not audited publicly. We don't have an accounting firm come in and do an annual audit. We are audited by our partners, but that's only for their specific interests that they have. And oh, by the way, we are 60% core, which means 60% of ours, basically, I own personally, 100% of, no partners. We have partners in 40% of what we own, and if we don't have an ownership interest, we don't manage it. We work too hard. We have the saying, our management adds equity value. So we do not do third-party management. There's one tiny exception to that. We are actually operating as a receiver for a community in Gainesville. And you know, if you want to be a third-party manager, you spend a lot of time in client acquisition. It's a lot of hard work to find clients, et cetera, and that's tremendously expensive. We don't do that. They came to us and said, hi, would you like to be the receiver? Okay, I mean, you know, no cost acquisition, something to help spread the overhead. And that was one of the reasons. We thought it'd be a good experience. But the third reason, this community was lowest cost community provider in our market, and we wanted to raise their rents. We've been wishing they'd raise their rents. And and so we were glad to take them over and move them up off the bottom, move the bottom of the market up. But by and large, we don't do third-party management. But about 10 years ago, I set up, if you study accounting, something called internal control is very important, having proper procedures over various assets, et cetera. External audit is one way you have good internal control. And I remember about 10 years ago, a check being cut that should not have been cut. And I went to my head of accounting at that time and said, why did you cut this check? And basically, because my CEO of that time said to cut it. And he said, my boss told me to cut it. And I said, I can fix that. And so that's when I moved the accounting department out and made it a separate operating company, reporting directly to the board for purpose of internal control, et cetera. So I tell my head of accounting, who's the president of the company, that, you know, Collier Companies is your biggest client. And you always make your biggest client happy. But I'm your owner. And you report to me. Internal control comes first. Material internal control, don't enforce stupid nitpicking rules, but if it's serious internal control, you answer, nobody but me. And that's very important. And the good news is we've never had any significant fiscal irregularities. The third operating company is asset management, which is responsible for the long term. What do you buy? What do you sell? How do you refinance? That type of thing. And they're also responsible for overseeing the effectiveness of your property management company. All of our partners generally have asset managers that interact with us. They tend not to interact with us directly. To a certain extent, they always do. But they frequently have asset managers that either oversee us for them or act as their advisors. I mean, it goes all over the board. Some of them completely let their asset management run the relations. Others are simply use them as advisors for the relationship. But my asset management company is responsible for overseeing the results and the efficacy of the property management company. So there's 3 operating companies that operate underneath the Collier companies, and there's about 45 different communities in that group there. So that's gives you a sense of the organizational structure, the size of the structure, et cetera. We're primarily in the state of Florida. We have 9 communities up in that former girls' school up in the Panhandle, otherwise known as FSU. We also have 3 down in South Florida. We have a community in Orlando near Central Florida. We have one up in Norman, Oklahoma. We have one in Athens, Georgia. We're also up in Illinois. So we have some nationwide presence as well as our concentration in the state of Florida. And by the way, you got a question, you have a thought, interactive is always encouraged and welcome. And if I talk too fast, please let me know. The enthusiasm gets into me. One of these questions is a question, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? Well, I wish I knew. Wish I knew. I will tell you, it takes a lot of energy. Okay, it takes a lot of energy. But you know what it takes? A lot of fear. Okay, if you're not scared, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. If you're not worried about losing it all, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. Okay, a guy named Harold Guillen ran IT&T before your time, but he took INT from just a small company to the first international conglomerate. He sort of invented the international conglomerate. And he was a great manager. And actually, when he left the company, they basically dismantled it because it was too big for anybody else to run. He ran it on Syrian. But he had the saying on entrepreneurship. And his basic thing is when you work for an institution, when you work for a corporation, you are personally never at risk. You go home, you're not at risk. But the entrepreneur goes home every night worrying about whether he's going to make payroll, worrying about how close he is to the edge of the cliff, wondering if the next deal is going to break him, okay? And fear, to me, hopefully quasi-rational fear, hopefully fear that you respond to intelligently, but if you don't have I've seen so many people out there, they're blissful, everything's going to go okay, what can go wrong? I mean, you have to have this, I call it, Bob, I'm an optimist, I really am, but I'm what I call a realistic optimist, and I'm what I'm called a scared optimist, okay? Listen, and people think entrepreneurs like risk. I hate risk with a bloody passion. I hate risk. My job, I like to play chess a lot as a kid. My job when I do a deal is to analyze the risk and find a way to lay off every little bit of risk I can before I enter in that deal, okay? I will find a way, much like your chess pieces cover each other, I will think about how I'm going to handle every risk in there. And my favorite is when I find a situation where there's a lot of perceived risk, but it's a paper tiger. I don't find those as often as I like, but occasionally I will find them where Warren Buffett says buy when everybody else is selling and sell when everybody else is buying. Being a good entrepreneur is something like that. But I will tell you, just because the other guy's losing a lot of money doesn't mean you're going to make money. There's something called third owner real estate, which means it doesn't make money until the third owner has it. So just because the other guy's losing money, don't get too excited about it. It's a good sign, a good start to the thing, but it's by no means a guarantee. To give you an idea, a little bit more of context, like I said, we're 60% core, 40% partner, and they range anywhere from 90-10 to 50-50. And we have a fine group of partners. J.P. Morgan, we're partners with up in Tallahassee. SEB is a German investment bank. We have 4 deals with them. Utah Retirement System, we just did 2 deals with them. Interesting experience. They paid all cash. First time I've ever anybody do this. I said, hey, excuse me, we can borrow money at 4%. It's the cheapest it's ever been. They said, we're buying T-bills at 2%. Why would we borrow money at 4%? I said, okay, I understand. And they said, well, you really don't. Every day they come and put $25 million on our desk and tell us to put it out there. So, okay, so the first partner I ever had that paid all cash. We have a deal with Sterling American, which are the owners of the New York Mets team. One of our very first deal was with GMAC. It was formerly known as, it became something else, but it was the old General Motors Acceptance. And then we did a couple deals with Bass International. We have a couple of deals with high net worth individuals. But where did it all start? It's big, it's nice. That's where it all started. Bought that on December 27th, 1972. That was my very first real estate investment. Okay, it's 4 blocks north of the law school. I lived upstairs, and I rented out the downstairs, and I was able to live for about half normal rent. I bought it with a $1,000 federally insured loan. That was my down payment. I figured if I could live at half cost, that was a pretty good use of my student loan, and that was my very first real estate investment. Graduated in 1974, 2 years later, with a degree in finance, and went off to find my my fortune. And 1974 was a little bit of an economic downturn. I got exactly one job offer. I put to use all the analytical skills I learned here and took it. And I went off and worked for 6 months in Atlanta and 6 months in New York with a very fine firm, Equitable Life. But quickly decided this was not what I wanted to do with my life. And like many people, I came back to the University of Florida to get an MBA to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But I made a couple decisions. One is that when I graduated, I decided that I've been perfectly happy living the student life, and I made a decision not to upgrade my lifestyle when I got my first job. I didn't buy any fancy stereo. I didn't buy any fancy clothes. I kept driving the same old beat-up car I did, and I was able to save a few $1,000s. And when I got back, I bought number 2 and number 3 of my real estate investments. And also, as a finance major, I found out that I couldn't read financial statements because, I could, but I couldn't because I didn't understand the language of accounting as well as I should have. They had their own little secret code, and these words didn't mean ordinary English things. And so when I came back to get my MBA in 75, they hadn't, Fisher School of Accounting did not yet exist. And so it was a much smaller degree of accounting courses, but I ended up taking every accounting course they offered at the time. And I learned the language of accounting. I learned where to bury the bodies so nobody will find them. Well, Jesus Christ. Boeing, in one sense of the word, they came out with their Dreamliner 787. They got this huge back order of plane orders. And in one sense of the word, they're losing like $10 million in every one they sell right now. But for accounting purposes, because they're amortizing this over the whole back order, they're making money. Okay, that's kind of a neat trick if you have the cash flow to build it up. But okay. You can do a lot of things with reserves. Lots of things with reserves for bad debts. Boy, I know all the magic tricks. It's fun. But I'm not publicly held, so I don't have to use them. We don't do GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, but it's fun to know them. I touch on it because one of the questions that I got from the students was that I've studied both law and accounting, and have I used them? Have they become useful? And the short answer is yes. They've been tremendously useful, both in terms of how I structure my deals and in terms of my ability to be creative in terms of what I do. Because you go to law school, you learn the difference between what is legal and what's common practice, et cetera, et cetera. And people, I know a lot of good lawyers who are great lawyers, but if you need a deal attorney that can help you be creative in how to structure to meet the needs of the two people, well, most of them are like, this is the last deal we do. I got all signed up. Their creativity in law don't necessarily match in terms of personality overlap. Let's put it that way. So it's been a very useful skill for me. And I took, in the good old days, if you take too many classes, you go too much high in your credit hours, I think they charge you extra or they try to push you out the door. Well, back then they didn't. You could hang around as long as you wanted. And so I took 3 years to get a 2-year MBA. And then, and this was, by the way, guys, if anybody's getting a joint MBA, JD, forgive me, I detest that particular degree because I don't think in 4 years you can't become a good lawyer and you can't become a good MBA. You're either a law with a business minor or you're business with a law minor, but hey, it's a great marketing device. But anyway, this was in the 70s and nobody had come up with the JD MBA yet. But there's supposed to be, we're supposed to get a broad-based education. There was supposed to be reciprocity between the graduate schools. And somebody made the mistake of telling me that the toughest tax courses at the University of Florida were not in the business school, they're over at the law school. And my personality, I took that as a personal affront, a personal challenge. And so I marched on over to the law school and say, hi, I'm in the MBA program and I want to sit in and I want to take one of your tax classes. And the registrar looked at me and said, you bloody fool. But here, go get the professor to sign and you can do it. And so I took 2 of them, boy, was I over my head. I had no idea what a citation was, anything, but hey, I did have a good grounding in tax. And I remember in the law school, if you render an opinion or you answer a question, you're supposed to be able to give either a citation to back it up, a legal case, or a statute. Well, I didn't know that. I remember one time I said, okay, why is that the right answer, Mr. Collier? He said, the rhythm of the code? Because the code giveth and the code taketh back, and sort of once you understand the rhythm of the code, there's a certain very perverted logic to it, but there is a logic to it. And it was just very logical that this would be the next step in what would happen in this thing. But it was really just an intelligent guess. But anyway, I had fun over there. And then as time went on, I got my MBA. And I somehow managed to squeak through the CPA exam, and I went to work for a CPA firm locally. And tremendous learning curve, did a lot of tax returns, and did some auditing. And I remember being out in the panhandle of Florida, auditing a public utility company, a co-op. It was so far out in nowhere, we would drive 50 miles to spend the night in Tallahassee hotel because it was out in the middle of nowhere. And you do random audits of inventory, and what do utilities have for inventory? They have poles. I remember being out in this warehouse counting poles and thinking, I don't think this is why God made me. As luck would have it, my father, in addition to being a professor at civil engineering, also served on our city commission here for many years. And the firm I worked for did the city audit and was their biggest audit. And City of Gainesville has a 2-term limit on the city commission. My dad managed to serve 6 terms because the limit was consecutive terms. So he'd get on, do his 2 terms, get off, and wait a few years and decide things were going to hell in a handbasket, and he needed to get back up there and straighten them out and run again. So, he decided to run again, and he was kind of the favorite to win, which made my bosses really scared because I was a walking, talking conflict of interest for them. What do you do? You don't want to fire the son of someone who just got elected, but you don't want to be a conflict of interest, et cetera. But little did they know that I have a very hard time sitting in an office for 8 hours a day, okay? I am basically unemployable, okay? Quite frankly, I'm unemployable. I'll give you an idea why. This is these are the 2 Nathans, okay? That is me when I was in college, okay? Right there, that was me, okay? Now, underneath that beat the heart of a Goldwater Republican who has evolved into a libertarian, but that was me at the age of 22, 23, okay? And you can't really see it, but I'm wearing scrubbed whites there because to get through college, I worked for 5 years at the student infirmary, okay? 5 years, 2 years as an undergrad, 3 years as a grad student. I worked the 11:30 to 7 shift. And to get through that, I would go and take a nap at 7 p.m., set the alarm to go off at 11. I grew to hate an alarm clock with a bloody passion. I had so many nights where I'd be perfect, and then boom, 5 years I did that 3 nights a week, okay? I worked my way through school, okay? My dad could have helped me, but I didn't want help. I do not own an alarm clock to this day, okay? I wake up when I wake up, okay? Now, I happen to have a paper route as a kid, delivering papers in the morning, so I naturally usually wake up around 5, 6 in the morning, but I don't own an alarm clock, and believe me, I never schedule a flight early enough so that I have to set an alarm clock, okay? My flights are at 10 o'clock in the morning. If it's before that, I'm going to find another flight to take. But I always was a rebel. I always was the maverick, and semi-cleaned up, things started to work out. But I had also taken the LSATs, the admission test to the law school, back when I was in school. I had the theory the best time to take a a law school, taking exams while you're in school. By some fluke, I'd scored in the 97th percentile. And I figured, wow, that's never going to happen again. And they're only good for 5 years, and then you have to retake it. Well, okay, so my 5 years came up, and I applied to law school because, I mean, who wants to lose such a nice score like that? I figured, computer must have had a power surge or something. And they accepted me, and my time to show up came, and I said, can I extend? They said, okay, you can show up the next class. Fine, great. And that came up, and I said, can I extend? They said, okay. And that time came up, and I said, can I extend? They said, Collier, it's your last time. Either show up at this extension or it's over. And that happened to coincide with my dad's election. So I quit to go to law school. Now, I knew I didn't intend to practice, so I had a lot of fun. I mean, actually, law school is an intellectual exercise if you don't have to get a job. It's a lot of fun. It really is. It's incredibly challenging. And I remember walking by, and if you don't know, in law school there's something called law review, which is students actually do the cutting edge of legal research in America in law reviews. And to be on law reviewing in the top 2 or 3% of your law class, which is actually a relatively intelligent group of test takers to begin with. So to make that elite group out of an elite group is quite something else. And I remember, now I knew that I was intellectually capable of the work. I just wondered if I had enough discipline or drive or whatever to do it. And I remember walking by law review, and as my first couple days there, I was tiptoeing by, because just appreciation for the intellectual capability and proudness of the people that were in there. And then, just like with any group of runners, you sort of catch up with the pace, and I was competitive, so I started studying hard because, believe me, I wanted to graduate at least in the top half or the top third of my class, and so it turned out to be a lot of fun. And unfortunately, by the way, law school can be tough on marriages. It really can be. And I got divorced about halfway through. It was far from the only problem, but it did contribute to it. I end up, and by the way, they put you through your first year, and then it was class of 80, of 100. Now I think it's a class of 80. And you're all together. It's like A through M and then N through Z, so you get to know your classmates pretty well. And I ended up dating someone a lot smarter than me. Not only did they make Law Review, they became an editor of Law Review. And not only did they become an editor of Law Review, they got the prize for the best comment in their freshman year and the best note in their senior year. But I remember by that time, I used to tiptoe by Law Review, and by the end of my graduation, I was sticking my head in the editor review meeting and said, when are you going to be done? We're supposed to get a pizza. Hurry up. And actually, I hung out there. So, they've redone the law school. It's much bigger, et cetera. But back when I was there, the most precious thing in the world was locker space, a place to keep your books in. They didn't have enough lockers for everybody. And so I used to go in there. I plop my books on Lucy's desk. I mean, why not, And she swears that the clerk was about to give me a certificate of appreciation for being on Law Review before she had to tell him, no, he doesn't really work here. Don't give him a certificate, So who knows? But it was a lot of fun. And, I also along the way became a real estate broker and got my Florida building contractor's license. Member of a great organization called Young Presidents Organization, where I learned a lot. 15 years ago, I took some executive ed at Harvard Business School. At OPM stands for Owners and Presidents. It was a class of 25. To be in that program, you had to be the owner of a president of a business of a certain size. And you went up there for 3 weeks a year for 3 years. And they had classes on Saturdays, so you couldn't leave, okay? You had to live in the dorms. Now, I will tell you the dorms at Harvard are pretty nice. It wasn't really hardship. But the experience of spending 3 weeks, 24/7, with 80 other owners and presidents of businesses was an incredible experience. I mean, I learned more from my fellow students there than I ever possibly could. and stretching out over 3 years really helped the relationships develop. And the professors were stupendous, and they're the second greatest sense of learning. And many of the people ended up, hiring some of their professors to be on their boards. And so that was a tremendous growth experience. And one of the fun things I'm doing now is Columbia University, and it's kind of related. One of the guys there I met, there's a liberal rag called The Nation. It's the oldest continuously published magazine in America. It's over 100 years old. I met the publisher of it there up there. He was taking the course learning how to, at least, if not making money, at least get his business to survive. And we became fast friends. And so he got me on this board of advisors of the Columbia Journalism Review, which is really fascinating because the intellectual proudness of the people is tremendous, and yet it's in a field I don't normally spend time in. Let's see. This is one of my, I have a million favorite quotes, and I like quotes because to know and to not do is to not know. What the use is information that you don't apply it? And yet, how do you remember at the critical moment of decision, not, that's what I should have done? How do you remember the quote? And I think of quotes as sort of being like little tabs on a body of knowledge. And if you have quotes that pop to mind and sort of, bring up the whole body of knowledge that goes behind that quote, it can be tremendously useful. And this is a quote I truly believe in, that there is very little difference between people, but that little difference makes a great difference. And quite frankly, it's a difference of execution. I mean, everybody knows how to lose weight. You eat well, eat nutritionally, and you exercise. Where's the secret? People don't do it, okay? It's in the doing, okay? It's the ability to focus your mind, to discipline yourself. Because, before you are worthy of leading others, you must be worthy of leading yourself, okay? And everybody wants to change the world. But if you can't change yourself, what the heck makes you think you can change anything else? Right? You've got to become the change you seek. I sat down just for the heck of it and wrote out a list, somewhat redundant, of what does it take to A, succeed beyond the norm, and what does it take to be an entrepreneur? And they're kind of related. I think you have to be a realistic optimist. I think you have to have true grit, some sort of internal standards. You got to have street smarts. I know so many people that are book smart but lack street smarts. Common sense is not common practice, okay? In the MSRE program, I've asked you to read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. People come to me and say, it's just common sense. I say, yes, but it's well-organized common sense, and how much of it do you do? All right, so would the common sense were common practice. Thrift. We all learned the burn rate of many of the startup internet companies, et cetera. I think there's thrift is a underappreciated virtue. Stick-to-itiveness, it's related to true grit. Resilience. Hey, we all fall down, okay? It's not that you fall down, it's just that you get back up. Resilience. Ambition, you have to have some sort of ambition, some sort of drive. And then you have to be flexible. The path is frequently not clear. I have sort of a concept I call 3 steps into the fog. I often don't know exactly where I want to go, but I know it's not back that way. I know it's that way, and I usually can get it down to like a 90-degree quadrant. But I can't see the far shore. But I'll take 3 steps into the fog, and lo and behold, I can see another 2 or 3 steps, and I keep going. And I may end up over here where it turns out when I want to be over there, but better than that, sitting back on the shore waiting for the fog to break. Steve Fortin died young, unfortunately, was a great American runner. The synopsis is sort of one of my philosophies of life was to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. There's a book out there called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist that was imprisoned in one of Nazis' Germany's prison camps, and he wrote a fascinating book about his experience called Man's Search for Meaning. And in there he talks about the question of life. What is the meaning of life? And his response, I've always loved, which is the meaning of life is not a question that you get to ask of life. It's a question life asks of you. Because life has whatever meaning you give it. If you give it nothing, it will have, if you're a nihilist, it will have no meaning. But it's whatever you give it. My belief is you have certain gifts, and the meaning of life is to develop them and to help people along the way, develop theirs, et cetera, et cetera. But the meaning of life is to become the best you can be, hopefully in a balanced way. Marina Navarova once said, and I love this quote, see I love a lot of quotes, was that the moment of victory is too fleeting to live for that alone. The moment of victory is too fleeting to live for that alone. All right? I will tell you, I love my life. It is a wonderful life. Okay? I have some beautiful homes and some beautiful locations with stunning views. I have pretty much everything a man could reasonably want. And believe me, quite frankly, well, if I could pick and choose a little bit of that life and create a composite life, I might. But if I had to trade my life with somebody else whole hog, no way. Nobody I would trade it with. There's a nice little, I don't have a big jet, but I got a small jet. I can spend it in New York in 2.5 hours. What more do you want? You know, I can get down to South Beach in 45 minutes. Hey, life is good. But age of 60, I am not one whit happier than I was at the age of 20. I was a pretty happy guy at the age of 20, and the age of 30, and the age of 40, and the age of 50, but I'm not all those possessions. I enjoyed the journey. It was fascinating, and I couldn't have done anything else because that's who I am. But none of them make me happy. And I will tell you, one of the things I've learned last recession, I knew it intellectually, but it was driven home with a more of emotional truth, is that your possessions own you. They own you. You don't own them. They own you. They take mind share. They take maintenance. Your possessions will end up owning you. They really will. So don't make the mistake. I mean, you've all heard it. You know the classic thing. Everybody knows that money doesn't make you happy, but everybody wants to find out for themselves. Okay? Okay, I understand. But don't pay too much. Okay? Don't pay with your soul. All right? Don't pay. I mean, the real currency of your life is time. The real currency of your life is time. All right? All right. My personal opinion. 3 keys to success are written goals, commitment to continuous learning, and persistence. And I suggest that journaling faithfully is an important key toward persistence and toward feedback. And I do something for my company. We call it Collier College. Every semester I lead about a 10 to 12 session internal class. And the very first session I lead them through is a goal-setting workshop, okay? Because my commitment to them is what I'm about to teach them is applicable 24/7 in their life. That I get to tell them what to do between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., but the rest of their life is theirs. But it's wasteful if they don't use it 24/7. But if this does not tie into your goals, then where's the motivation, et cetera. So you'd be amazed how many people have not gone through a formal setting of goal setting. And by the way, okay, this is this is my office at home. Okay, I mean that's 2 walls. The other 2 walls look the same. Okay, there are books. I am surrounded by books. You know, think about a book. Someone's been kind enough to distill everything they learned in life and hopefully put it in a well-organized form so you can learn from it. And you read 100 books, maybe you've lived 100 lives effectively if you can take that knowledge and distill it in. So, you know, I grew up in Gainesville. Gainesville's not exactly a big business town. There were no mentors. I mean, every day I hire somebody new or get a new property. My company's bigger than anything I've ever led before. And so books became my mentor. I mean, you know, I've also done the CDs in the car. I mean, cram it all in because, you know, I want to be the best you can be. And this stack, and it's about 12 to 15 inches high, is my journals going back about 20 years, okay? And, you know, I have set up every year, I think, what I want to accomplish in that year, how I'm doing on my overall goals. But these journals force me to review and to be reflective and to say, okay, feedback, how am I doing? Am I living my dreams? Am I living my goals? Am I walking my talk, et cetera? And, you know, I mean, I will tell you that they've been a tremendous source of guidance and anchoring for me. I mean, I recommend it highly to you that you have some form of journaling. And, you know, this is sort of like, remember, I told you what the secrets of losing weight or being fit, you know, exercise, eat well. And the secret of success are the same. But how many people, I mean, first, if people think of, you know, learning as I sit here, professor, and you damn well better cram it in my brain or it's your fault if I don't learn. Well, real life ain't that way, okay? And real life doesn't always sit in the classroom. You know, there's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher would appear. Okay, wonderful Zen saying. And I kept waiting for Mr. Chips to show up with a chalkboard. 1, 2, 3, Mr. Collier, this is the lesson. Thank you, appreciate it. Here's a summary for you to take home so you don't have to take good notes. Then I figured out that my teacher is usually the most irritating person in my life at the moment. And that I had to take a really active role in this. Otherwise, I wasn't going to maximize the benefit. And, you know, one of my belief systems, I want to operate from the highest leverage point possible. Life is too wonderful. I have too much to give to operate from anything less than the highest leverage point possible. And so, therefore, it was my belief that it was my, how can I maximize the amount of learning? How can I use this problem? How can I learn the maximum I can from it instead of it just being painful? Anybody know what whiteout is? Okay. What is whiteout? From the days of typewriters as word processors. Okay. I mean, to give you an idea, this was done on an IBM Selectric. That is an IBM Selectric. Okay. That's an old-fashioned word processor that long gone before most of you were born. But just to give you an idea of how old. I mean, that's whiteout, okay? This is so old. And I mean, guys, I was at the cutting edge. I got me, in 1982, I got me a K Pro 2, the very first computer. You probably never, it was the size of a sewing machine, okay? It was huge. And it had, you ready for it? 64K. That was the entire memory, 64K. I mean, you got incredible multiples out in your phone. You know, there's probably more than 64K in this thing. But that was it, okay? And discs truly were floppy back then, okay? Big 7.5-inch things. But I was, I got that thing, and I got my first dot matrix printer. And so, I mean, this predated this because it was after 1982, I would have had my dot matrix printer. So this is over 30 years ago. I mean, I was sitting down there, and I was focusing my energy, affirmations, okay, visualizations, planning, life plans, knowing where I wanted to go, knowing, I mean, people think, well, you know, I'm this or I'm that. I can't help this. I'm this kind of person. Your personality is not stamped on you at birth. There's a great book out there called Learned Optimism, How to Move Your Needle on Optimism. And I've always talked the point of view. I've got a, if you ever come by my office, there's this great big statue, it's about 8 foot high. And it's of this guy, and it's a block of stone from the waist down. And from the waist up, it's a human being. And he has a great big mallet in his hand, and he has a chisel, and he's carving himself out of the block of stone. And it's called self-made man. And that's my, now, okay, if you want a definition of an entrepreneur, that's my definition of an entrepreneur. But it's also my definition of what I felt I could do with myself. because I always felt that I was a work in progress, and I was going to be the best me that I could be, and I was going to focus it. And you know, these days, there are self-help books all over the place, and we kind of take them for granted. But way back when I was growing up in the early 70s, there actually were relatively few self-help books. It's actually a relatively new genre. And by the way, we didn't have bottled water back then either, okay? Bottled water is really pretty much invention of the last 2 decades. It's an invented need, and because we didn't have enough landfills to fill up. And guys, you know, I mean, when I was a kid, we actually had phones you dialed, okay? And I lived in Gainesville when it was so small, you only had to dial 5 numbers because there just weren't that many phones, okay? And Gainesville Sun got published, was an afternoon newspaper and didn't publish on Saturdays. It was that small a town that long ago. And we didn't even have answering machines. I remember when answering machines were an incredible invention. You didn't have to hang and wait for the phone. You could come back and see if somebody called. You were freed out of your office or your home. And I mean, I remember when fax machines were new technology, okay? Brand new technology. And the world, and then we had this little crazy kind of paper, heat-sensitive paper, and that was faded after a while, and then a few years later I started using plain paper. But that's the speed of change, okay? That's happened out there. And I was kind of fortunate. My father was pretty kept up as well. And I remember he gave me the very first Mac, because he had got one, he liked it, and it actually sat in a box for like a month or 2 or 3 before I opened it, because I figured, well, what could be better than my K-Pro 2? And also it was kind of around turn that he gave it to me like in July, and I was busy, and I finally opened it up in September, and then I discovered what was something much better than my K-Pro 2. But the world is changing fast, and but I point this out to you to give you an illustration or let you know how, I mean, this is over 30 years old, I was doing this. And when I was in the early 70s, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, back from the 30s, was one of the premier self-help books out there. And the category was about, you know, on the bookshelf at the bookstore was about, you know, like that big. It was not a big category. Now it's a huge category. And I remember, but I read it. But to read once, you don't learn. To know and to not do, and it's a repetition. I remember somewhere in my early 20s, my girlfriend then, eventually my first wife, walking into my office at home and saying, "What are you doing?" And I was literally outlining the book, okay? Literally by longhand outlining the book, because that's the one way in which I learned how to internalize at a deep level, not just go through and read it once, but to actually outline it. And that way, the principles drove home deeper into me, and I was able to bring them to bear at the time. And you know, I mean, like when I first got 7, I wrote like a 30-page summary of 7 habits. You know, by that time it was on a word processor. But that's how I drove the points. It wasn't enough to read. I had to learn them and reread the book and actually write it out. And these, I mean, I'm a good deal maker. I know how to do deals. But at some point in time, deals require trust. They require, and you have to earn that trust, but you also have to be the ability to establish a rapport with a person, learn how to listen. I don't know that listening is a normal human skill. We spend a lot of our time listening, but we spend very little time studying how to listen, and listen effectively, and listen with your inner ear, listen with your heart at other people. And you know, I was kind of a brash young man, so I had to work kind of hard on all these people skills. You know, but you know, what do people want? You say, well, I want to be successful. I want to be happy. Well, you know, there is a place in success in Arkansas, and appropriately enough, it's hard to find. It's off the beaten path, and not many people live there. 170 people live in Success, Arkansas. Now, to be fair, we also find there's a success in Ohio, Missouri, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Virginia. I think we're a success-oriented country. And there is a road called Success. I think I found this down in Lakeland, Florida. But one of my beliefs is that goals are the you can't hit a target you can't see, and goals are the having a target to shoot for is incredibly important. You know, I mentioned this before. Archimedes, goals allow us to operate from the highest leverage point possible. They focus our energy. And that old saying, give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I can move the earth. This is one of my favorite poems. One ship drives east and another west by the self-same winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sails and not the gales that decides the direction we go. I think most people go the same distance in life. Just a lot of people go in circles, and then they wake up in their 40s and 50s and say, why didn't I get anywhere? Well, they didn't have a goal. They just went in circles. And if that's what you want to do in life, fine, but know that's what you're doing. And in my heart of hearts, I believe that most people don't really want to go in circles. They'll powerfully impact your life. I'll give you a caveat. You have to make very, very sure that these are your goals, right? That they're not goals of your parents or your spouse or your peer group. And they're not goals that you really haven't thought about very carefully. Because it's so easy to pick up programming, social programming. I remember I retired once in my life. My original goal in real estate was simply to have an outside income because I knew how stubborn I could be and how I didn't like to be told what to do, which is probably not the best attitude for somebody who's going to work for somebody else. And so I always want to have, 6 months. I mean, to work, to live paycheck to paycheck seemed to me a form of wage slavery, and I really didn't like that idea. And having savings and outside income was a form of freedom, and I like freedom. So my original goal was to have, outside income 30%, 40% of my regular job salary, and enough saved up I could live for 6 months, and that was my idea of freedom. And it kind of got out of hand, and around the age of 30, I made my first million, which back then was real money. And I had a middle-class income, and so I retired. I owned my house, I owned my car, and I got all my science fiction books out there, Stranger Strange Land, stamped my hammock, and took a photography course, and I got bored. I got bored, and so I kind of said, well, I'm going to just see how far I can take it. So like going, there's no purpose to Olympic gold medal except to be the best in your class. So I said, okay, how far can I take this? Just for the best in the class and develop myself in the process. Now, I will tell you the fascinating thing is that being a leader of people and being worthy of leading them, and Covey in 7 Habits talks about the difference between positional power and personal power. I am the leader of my company by virtue of positional power. I own it. I own the company, I own the assets, etc. I'm owning it. But I also very much want to be worthy of leading the company by virtue of personal power. So people believe in you, believe you care, believe you're competent, believe you can help them get where they want, etc. And both of them are important. A balanced life, you develop them both. And so being a leader and being worthy of the leader and being a good steward leader, because I believe we're all stewards, really. I think we're in big trouble because Wall Street kind of lost track of the fact there's more to life than having $1 billion. You have an obligation and responsibility to every stakeholder. But being worthy of leading this company has been the most tremendous growth experience that I've ever had. And I mean, for that alone, it's been a worthy experience. Unless you shape your life, life will shape you, quite frankly. And I'd rather be the one chipping away than some random process chipping away at it. And it's not easy. It never is. If we're easy, first off, the easy stuff's been done. Okay, the easy stuff's been done already. And if we're easy, everybody would do it, and somebody making minimum wage would have your job. But it takes a lot of hard work, sacrifice, persistence. And so, basically, like losing weight, achieving a goal is pretty simple. I mean, you decide what you want, make up a plan to get it, implement the plan, get feedback, observe the result, modify the plan, and repeat. I mean, really, it's a pretty simple formula. But people don't do it. They don't do it with passion. Hey, another one of my favorite sayings, I got a million favorite sayings, is, so easy when you want to, so hard when you don't. Okay? The hardest thing in the world is to do something you don't want to do. I mean, I can bound out of bed and head for the beach full of energy, these goals that must tie into your personal value system. And now, I'm going to talk, if I have a chance, I'll talk a little bit about discipline, self-discipline. I know that's a dirty word. Folks don't like that word anymore. I happen to love the word because it's a secret of success. But you can think of discipline like the wood forms on concrete, okay? They say you can form a habit in 21 days. But discipline should be like the forms in the concrete that hold the concrete in place till it solidifies. If you continuously have to crack the whip on yourself to do something, then it better be incredibly fun. I mean, I got a great job. And to a large extent, I can determine what is my job. But even at my level as owner of a company, there's still some things I have to do I don't want to do. Okay, still. All right. Fortunately, it's probably only 5 or 10%, but it's still there. And folks, I got news for you. It's always going to be there at some percentage of your job. And that's reality, and I do it. But quite frankly, if after a while, if you practice self-discipline, and it's not core and fundamental to your goals, and you still don't want to do it, this really is a big, bright, flashing neon sign from life to you that this is not a core goal of yours. You're trying to make yourself do something you really don't want to do. And so you need to go back to your journal and think about it and think through, why is it I don't want to do it? What is my resistance coming from? Because, folks, life is too wonderful to sail into a headwind all the time, okay? If you have to, you do it. But most of my life has been finding out which way the winds are blowing and finding out what I can do in that direction rather than stubbornly fighting. I pick my battles very, very carefully, and I'm much more into judo, sort of, we're going to let it flow over you, et cetera, then, come on, I'll take you on. I mean, that's a waste. Some things are worth fighting for. A lot of things aren't. Pick them and choose them carefully. But remember, very simple formula. Why don't more people use it? It's rocket science. Being simple is not the same thing as being easy. I love this quote. It amazed me. Most people spend more time planning their vacation than they do their life. I mean, it's true. It's true. Most people spend more time. When I was, I guess probably a sophomore here, I took a course in logic, which turned out to be a course in philosophy disguised. And the professor asked us to write out our value system, write out our philosophy of life. I said, I know I got one somewhere. What is it? And it was a tremendous growth experience for me to think out, what is my philosophy of life? And I recommend it highly to everybody. And that experience as a sophomore, thinking about, okay, what is my philosophy of life? And which is a broader question than the meaning of life. It's what is your philosophy of life? And in thinking through that will get you in touch with your values. And I told you I was going to bring up that discipline word. I'm sorry about that. And I know Andy tells me that these new generation kids, that'll just chase them away. I say, well, there's got to be some. I want to be the few, the proud, the brave. Find me those. I can nudge them. Most people fall short of the potential because, first off, they're not systemic in their approach. Okay, they're all over the board. They haven't sat down and made up written goals. Okay, and they haven't thought through the goals. And you know what? Before you decide you want something, decide why you want it and what you're going to do with it. Okay, because I remember, somehow I had this idea that success was lying on a beach, with a Mai Tai in your hand and whatever. And I got there on the beach, and it was boring as hell. And I hadn't really realized I had sort of this unconscious assumption from too many movies that that's what success was. And I said, that's not success for me. Success for me is building something, creating something, but still that little bit of programming got stuck in the back of my mind. I never really thought it through. And that beach is great for a week, but 52 weeks is my idea of hell. You know, I have this cartoon from the New Yorker. Guy's on the beach with a laptop, and he's turning to the person next to him and says, "I'm not a workaholic. I work to relax." Well, when you're doing what you love, there's a little bit of truth in that. Okay, a little bit of truth in that. You know, they're not systemic in their approach, they're not organized in their life, and when they are, they do not persist, they do not continue, and they don't follow through. In short, they're not disciplined. You know, every disciplined effort yields multiple results. You must be aligned in your actions, your thoughts, and your beliefs. Oops. You can break up the word responsibility into response-able. Are you able to vary your responses to the situation? Are you able to be flexible? And, you know, this is my belief. You know, we never try what we think is impossible, okay? We never try what we think is impossible. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty far-fetched that some little guy in some small town in Florida would become the largest private holder of student housing, but it happened. And it happened. I never thought it would go this far, quite frankly, and I'm glad I did, because it probably would have scared the hell out of me and I would have gotten impatient and nervous. But think you can, you're very right. But this is an interesting truth. In one sense of the word, it is not so much a failure of discipline as it is a failure of motivation. Disciplined motivation, if you will, focused motivation, but still motivation. You know, you can have willpower and you can have want power. And a given amount of want power trumps willpower any day. And one of the secrets of my success is focusing on the things I need to do to get to success and making myself want to do them, okay? And like anything in life, the more you put of yourself in it, any game, anything, the more you get emotionally invested in it. The more time you spend, it sort of pulls you forward. And so if you can learn how to focus your energy on something and make yourself want to do the things that will make you successful, and how to transfer, you know, from willpower to want power, making yourself learning the triggers of your motivation, becoming self-aware of what moves you forward and how you can sort of attach those things to the things that you need to do is tremendously powerful. You know, I mean, I'm sure you all have friends who love to run or love other forms of exercise, and they will tell you how it becomes addictive after a while. Okay, that high. Personally, I play racquetball, and I've been playing it for probably 30, 35 years, and I play 4 or 5 times a week. And believe me, I do it after the end of the day, and it's such a mood changer, such an energizer. I don't know how I don't know if I could have stayed sane throughout the Great Recession without that game at the end of the day. And just that, you know, I'm competitive, so that ball coming back at me, I'm going to hit it back no matter how tired I am. And I make a social appointment with somebody. So if I was just running by myself, running's not my thing, by the way, I would be more like, it's too easy. But, you know, I got my friend Tom or my friend Bob or my friend Ricky. They're coming by to play, and I'm not going to call them up and wimp out on them. Okay, so these are the things. I know that competition motivates me. I know that keeping my promises to other people motivates me, and you learn how to put them on the things you need to do. Maybe being part of a team keeps you up, etc. But if you learn to be aware, you learn your motivators, and you learn how to use them. Yeah, make no little plans that have no power to stir men's soul. If your goals don't energize you, there's not enough of a bee hog. You know, big, hairy, audacious goals. You need to have goals that stir your spirit. Bee hog comes from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. Set a goal that's big enough So in the process of achievement, you become something worth becoming. You know, and JFK, he did his moonshot speech. I love that, you know, we will send a man to the moon in this decade. And I love his reasoning. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, because they are hard. Folks, if you want it easy, please go work for my competition. Please, please, please. If a hard goal doesn't invigorate you and excite you, please go work for my competition. I got their address here. I'll give you their HR person's phone number. Go work for them. Please, please, please. But don't work for me. And because those goals will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. I may hope never to be somebody's easiest job, but I hope the job will bring out the best in you. And that's my goal for everybody that works with me. You know, they got this old thing, I just had to throw it in there. You know, SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-based. And then, you know, hey, because I'm me, all the, you can be stretching, systemic, synergistic, meaningful, memorable, anything to keep you focused on what a goal should be. But they do need to have deadlines, okay? You could argue whether they need to be realistic or not, but you have to believe in them. They do need to be action-oriented. They do need to have timelines and accountable periods, but they have to be also memorable, motivating to you. You know, and the question you should ask yourself, if you sit down and do go, what would you most like to change about yourself? What would you most like to change about your life? And then a guy named Wayne Dyer wrote a bunch of books, but he wrote one book called Real Magic. And he had a very interesting definition of magic. He said magic was when you got yourself to do something that you used to think you couldn't. Okay? Used to think you couldn't. And, you know, it's Anthony Robbins, Good to Great, and Awaken the Giant Within, or Unlimited Power and Awaken the Giant Within. Used to have something he called that every belief needs to have table legs. In other words, experiences you have that make this belief real to you. You know, I've been able to do some things in my life that I used not to think I could do. And, you know, I'll pick a silly one. I used to be addicted to Coke. I used to drink 4, 5, 6 Cokes a day. And the idea of not drinking, well, whatever. And now I drink bottled water. But I used to think I could never give up. That was, you know, and I did. I used to be very, very fond of my glass of wine, okay? And I used to be very fond of, of it every night. And I decided that was too much. And I gave it up once for 5 years and decided, okay, lick that demon. And then I started drinking again within, 9 months. I was back to a drink a night. And so about a decade ago, I decided, this does not help me be my best self, which is sort of, does it make the world a better place? Does it make it a better thing? And, the first time I gave it up for 5 years, it was a struggle because I really, I'll tell you the truth. I got divorced from my first wife, and I was a social drinker at that point. And then I used alcohol to get me through my divorce, which is a really stupid thing to do. And it became, I always had it under control because I'm a disciplined person. No more than 3 drinks a night. Never drink while you're out, beyond 2. Never drink more than the people you're with. I had real rules, and I stayed to them. But it bothered me that I would have 3 drinks a night, 7 days a week. It really bothered me. And I remember the first time I quit. And I'm going to talk a little bit, a guy named Scott Peck wrote a great book called Road Less Traveled. In the beginning of it, he talks, the first words of life are difficult, which is the 4 Noble Truths of Buddhism. But the second half of the book, he talks a lot about grace, which is serendipity if you're an agnostic, and is the presence of a higher power if you're not. And I remember 3 weeks into my first sabbatical, my 5-year sabbatical on alcohol, I was going to, I'd been on it for 3 weeks, and I was going for a week with some friends of mine to Club Med. And if you've ever been to Club Med, the alcohol's free, okay? It's French. There's wine for breakfast. There's wine for lunch. The big carafes in there, etc. And I knew this was going to be a test. But, I've always believed that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I hang out in South Beach a lot, even back then. And I remember walking down the beach, and by the way, I consider myself a personal introvert, a business extrovert, but a personal introvert. I keep a small, close circle of friends. But, I'd rather read a good book than go to a party, quite frankly. And so I don't generally talk to people in public. And I've kept an apartment in South Beach for 10 years, and 6 years after that, I still own a place there. So I've been going down to South Beach for 25 years and taking many a dawn walk on the beach. And this is the first and only time that I've ever observed this. I was walking by a group of people, and 8 or so in a circle, and it was right at dawn, 7 a.m., 6:30. And for some reason, I had a powerful urge to stop and ask them what they were doing. I mean, there are yoga classes on the beach all the time, but this is the first time I've ever seen a group of people in a circle. And, I walked past them because I don't talk to strangers, I'm an introvert. But the feeling was so strong that I turned around and I said, what are you guys doing here? Well, what's this about? And they replied in sort of a code. They said, we're friends of Bill. And if you know anything about the self-help movement, you know that Friends of Bill was the founder of the Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, wow, I don't consider myself in that, but do you mind if I join you? Okay? And it was a wonderful experience of people sharing strangers. And to me, that was like, wow, that's the sign, be it the teacher appearing, the student is ready, but that's the sign. And I breezed through that Club Med, and that was the start of my 5-year sabbatical. And now I'm in my about 8 years now, and I think now I'm at the age of 55, I became a father for the first time, and that's been the most fun experience I've ever had. And our house is pretty much. I don't want him ever see. I don't want him, quite frankly, to see the experience of seeing his father ever drink. So that's a tremendous experience for me. If you stand and sit down goals, what are your dreams? What are your passions? What is your magnificent obsession? Where do you want to go with your life? What do you want to achieve with your life? This is how you create your roadmap, and you visualize the attainment of your goals often. And they're simply goals are nothing but dreams with dates attached. By the way, these are the PowerPoints for a session. I spend 3 hours taking my company in Collier College through a goal-setting workshop. And, these are the guidelines I give them. Make sure your goals are working for you, something you really want, not something sounds good, consistent with your values. They must be balanced and in alignment. First off, do not try. I don't like to tell people to put limits on themselves, but I advise you not to try to become an NBA player and a heart surgeon, okay? Very difficult. There's no real alignment in those goals. And then your goals also should be positive. I don't recommend goals like, get even with my wife, okay? That's not a good goal, all right? Have them goals that make you move you forward. And negative goals come with a lot of baggage. Make sure they're high enough. Also, your goals should be over a time frame. You need to have some immediate goals, some intermediate goals, and then some long-term goals. And man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's his heaven for? Robert Browning. And with as much detail as you can. It's important to have balanced goals that cover all the areas of your life. These are 6 suggested areas that you should have goals in. And I will tell you, there are basically 2 kinds of motivations in life. One is what I would call moving toward motivations. You have something you want. And the other is a moving away from motivation. I grew up poor, okay, folks? I grew up in a place in Miami called Carroll City. If you've ever been there, it's still poor, all right? Grew up there in the 60s, and believe me, we didn't have air conditioning. All right, jalousie windows, no air conditioning, terrazzo floors, 1 bathroom, 3 kids, and divorced parents. It made me who I am. But moving away from poverty was a real goal of mine. I remember lying, I had to share a bedroom with my brother, and we had 1 window fan, and we'd set it up on the chest of drawers so it blew over the bed, and didn't help much, but hey, when it's 92 degrees outside, it was better than nothing. We used to fight over who got to be in the middle of the bed. I was the bigger brother, I usually won. And then eventually, hey, we got rich and we bought a second fan we could put in the window. And so therefore, we sort of bring in, that was a big debate, do we put them 2 on the things, we each got a breeze, or did 1 go there and 1 brought in the cooler night air, etc. But that's a moving away value. And both moving toward values and moving away values each have their weaknesses. The trouble with the moving away value is when you get far enough away, it stops to motivate, okay? The trouble with the moving toward value is that when you get there, then what, okay? Then what? And there are ways to handle both of them. I told you that avoiding poverty was a moving away value for me. Well, I learned to love business, and it became a moving toward value. So you can often turn your moving away values into moving toward values if you're aware of it. And the thing about I call the moving toward value problem the is this all there is type of thing. I reach the mountaintop, what's next? Several ways to handle it. One is to have goals in every area of your life, okay? And so when you achieve a goal in this area of your life, say, that's great, that's wonderful, I'm going to work on this goal, all right? And the second thing you need to do is to have successive goals. And, okay, you just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, now you're going to climb Mount Everest. And as you start to get near one goal, start thinking about the goal beyond it, start investing energy into it, etc. Reach the top, celebrate, have a good time, but I've already put energy beyond the goal. And then also, if your goal is to become the best you can be, the best spouse, the best father, the best mother, the best friend, the best human being, that, folks, is a goal you'll never reach, thank God, okay? Because it's sort of like being in the gym. You go in there and you get all buffed up and you're about as fit as a human being can be, and you walk out those double doors, 3 days later, entropy is set in and you're no longer fit, okay? And that's just like life. And, people say, like, about motivation. Oh, I went to this motivation seminar, I got all motivated, and it's 3 days later I've lost it. Well, motivation is like bathing. You do it every day. Okay? You've got to, the successful people in life know how to motivate themselves. They don't depend on something outside them to motivate themselves. Personally, I find my journals very motivational because I go back to the basics of what my plan for life is. I also like to read a little bit of inspirational literature, and morning or night. And I say to myself, Nate, you don't have to read a chapter, just read a page. And read until you get one good idea, hold that idea in mind, and go forward. But motivation has to be repeated. It's like exercise. It's like everything else. Once doesn't do it. Okay? You have to always do it over and over again. Okay. I am actually, these are a bunch of questions that I use to spark people's minds when they are... because I ask them to sit down and write out 3 to 5 goals in each of the areas of their life, and then I say, I want you to do an action plan to implement those goals. And these are, I told you I'm a member of a YPO Young Presidents Organization, and one of the tenets of that organization is take-home value. What is the take-home value from every experience we have together? And if there's no take-home value, hey, we're presidents, we're CEOs, we want take-home value. And so, quite frankly, if you are not somehow different as a result of the 90 minutes we've spent together, if you somehow don't see the world a little tiny bit different, then I will have failed, and I don't do that, okay? I will have failed, and that's not part of my mission in life. So, to help you get some take-home value, I brought you home some notes, okay? And what this is, front and rear page, And if there's not enough to go around, if you will email me, I can email this out to you. But what it is, first off, is it's a series of questions for each of the roles, okay? Designed to spark your attention, etc. And on the back of it is the action plan. Pick one. You're supposed to sit there and write out goals. 3 to 5, as many as you can for each area, and then you're supposed to pick a goal and write down how you intend to accomplish that goals. Chunk down your goals into baby steps, smaller steps, and then what could you do today? What you could do tomorrow? What could you do? And set yourself up a series of accountability checkpoints, okay? Because goals that are not written down are meaningless. Quite frankly, they're not written down, and you need to be balanced across all the roles of your life, or you will be unhappy when you get old. And then you must have action plans, and you must have feedback. That's what your journal's for. And then you must have accountability checkpoints. These classes go over 90 days. I ask people actually to write something on a piece of paper, and we seal it up, and I give it back to them in 90 days. But you guys are all self-starters, right? Yeah, you are. And then you write your goals right across the top, write your timeline, fill in your action steps. Now, many goals fit across multiple time frames, net worth goals or income goals, travel goals, etc. I want to do this within 1 year, this was in 3 years, this was in 5 years, multiple time frames. Give yourself enough time. This is so true. We tend to overestimate what we can do in a day or a week, and underestimate what we can do in a life or a year. Accomplishing big goals come from accomplishing many small goals. 100% improvement generally comes 1% at a time. Never underestimate the power of persistence. I mean, if I have a secret in life, it's persistence. My grandfather wrote a couple of books. Unfortunately, I never met him. He died 2 years before I was born. But one was called Riches Within Your Reach. And one of my favorite quotes of his was that success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. So the power of persistence, that's, and I sometimes add polite persistence. Study other people. I talk to the power of books. Copy. Don't least bit hesitate to copy. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to believe in yourself. I'm amazed how many people don't truly believe in themselves. I'm amazed how many people listen to an internal critic that says you can't, or you're, I decided a long time ago that enough bad things happen in life just by chance. That I was always going to be on my own side. I was always going to be on my own side. I was always going to believe in myself, okay? That I was going to be my own cheerleader, my own coach, and I work hard at being a good coach. I was going to be my own best friend because I also believe you have to set a good example for other people. Because if you don't believe in you, your mama will, your dad will, but that's about it, okay? So, give people a good example to follow. Believe in yourself. Be your own good best friend. And if you lack self-confidence, wing it. Wing it. Create the future. Tell the truth in advance. I'm a big believer in affirmations, and one of mine was my sense of self is anchored deep within, and from that flows wonderful peace. I really never cared much about other people's opinions. I've done some funky things in life, and they've worked, and hey, I laughed all the way to the bank. I don't care. I never was much of a joiner. My sense of self is anchored deep within, and from that flows wonderful peace. I always was a maverick because I believed in myself. Clear targets to guide me. Written goals, only 3% I've read that. I hope it's true. And fewer than 1% of them review their goals daily. Now, I don't review my goals daily, okay, but I do review them faithfully and frequently. The more focused you are, the more likely you are to accomplish them. Review frequently, and every time, you have to make a decision, ask yourself, does it take me closer to or further from my goal? Does it make me a better person? Does it make the world a better place? And then, the last thing is, do not hesitate. I have, true confession, given up on some goals, okay? I decided I picked the wrong goal, or this goal just ain't working out, and I got dozens of others to work on. So don't feel you have to be slavish toward, can't do this too often, but if it ain't working out, if life is sending you big, real red signals, put your energy everywhere. Not every battle is worth saving. I hope that you will take this to heart. I hope that if you don't have written goals, that you will go home and start thinking about what you want to do with your life. I hope you will put the same effort into planning your life that you do your vacations or your weekends. And I hope that you will all be your own best friends, because you deserve nothing less than it. Thank you very much. I have, true confession, given up on some goals, okay? I decided I picked the wrong goal, or this goal just ain't working out, and I got dozens of others to work on. So don't feel you have to be slavish toward, can't do this too often, but if it ain't working out, if life is sending you big, real red signals, put your energy everywhere. Not every battle is worth saving. I hope that you will take this to heart. I hope that if you don't have written goals, that you will go home and start thinking about what you want to do with your life. I hope you will put the same effort into planning your life that you do your vacations or your weekends. And I hope that you will all be your own best friends, because you deserve nothing less than it. Thank you very much.